Hello and welcome to another episode of Retrospective. Today we are looking at the Brendan Fraser classic, the 1999 The Mummy. I am one of your hosts, Ben, and this is Charles. Take it away.
Hello. Um, I didn't have many notes for this one, to be honest. It's easily, and this is going to sound incredibly hyperbolic, but this is easily a 9 out of 10 to me, or even a 10 out of 10. The only flaws I could really think about for this film were mainly just its age. The CGI wasn't quite there yet. It's very impressive. I will give them that, but it's not quite there yet, and it's aged quite poorly. I think a lot of the shots with Imhotep look quite bad, but that's just damning with fine praise. Really, there's really nothing to criticize here. It's a fucking great film.
I would fully agree. The CGI definitely looks very dated, and even some of the when Imhotep is attacking everything, you see some bits where there's fireballs flying out in the background. That backdrop essentially looked very, very bad. But in terms of the stunt action where the fireballs were coming in and hitting nearly hitting the people, that looked very good. But
Well,
yes,
they blended a lot of practical with CGI, but I feel like there's some shots that should have used more practical. I think when you see the fight with Anaxinamun and Evie, that's obviously just somebody in a mummy costume, and it looks great. Why didn't they do that for more of the mummies? I think there's a bit as well where, the very Ray Harryhausen-esque ones that come out the walls, like the priests of Imhotep that come to fight Brendan Fraser. One of them gets set on fire, and obviously they could not do that in CGI at the time, so they had a guy in a costume and set him on fire. So why didn't it looked fine? Why didn't they make the other one CGI? I think practical. I mean, it would have just looked better.
Yeah, I think at the time it probably would have looked really cool and really fancy, but just one of those things annoyingly with age that has just not gone well. But other than that, for me, I think it was a slightly anticlimactic ending of just defeating the big boss type of thing. But that's me nitpicking, really, for what I personally didn't like.
I mean, I thought the ending was fine. I mean, a lot of this, I don't know if you know, but this is technically a remake.
It's like a remake of a remake. There's so many of
Yes.
these mummy movies. It's I think it's the third in the sort of incantation of mummy starts.
Kind of. I mean, this is obviously, the third version of what was started originally with Boris Karloff as the mummy, one of the Universal monsters, and they did a great job of capturing, I think, the overall essence of what the original Boris Karloff film was going for. This whole sort of swashbuckling Errol Flynn-esque adventure with these treasure hunters. They did a very good job, I feel.
So my first note is literally, this brings me back, The Mummy. Brendan Fraser, what a childhood delight for me. As you know, well, not as you know, but The George of the Jungle, I loved that movie as well. That was, very, very cool for me. Definitely one I would love to do for this podcast. But nearly 7 minutes in, and we're still having that sort of intro, over voice narrative by someone, and I was still pretty intrigued even now. Nothing will beat the Lord of the Rings intro narrative for me.
I mean, yeah, the big exposition dump at the beginning, normally I'd have a slight issue with, but again, it's just leaning so nicely into its origins, really, and the story's pretty good. It also helps that. I mean, my first note is, goddamn, that opening still looks incredible. I don't know if you know, but it's almost entirely CGI. It looks incredible. The way they matched up the sort of live action plates with the CGI is absolutely mind bending for that time. And if I remember rightly, they had to go back and film this because I think they sort of got a little extra bit of budget towards the end, so they went back and filmed this intro, and it was worth it. It looks so amazing. You can find a breakdown of it online, how they did it, and it's phenomenal. ILM really did a fantastic job on this one.
I think I read at some point in filming they had a lot of problems with filming in Egypt for something that was going on at the time.
I do vaguely remember reading about that. I mean, this is one of those films that I absolutely adored. So I bought like every limited edition like version of this film that they did when it came out. I've got like the making of book. I even have, unfortunately not for this one, but oh no, it is for this one. So I just look around to check. I have one of the caps that the production crew wears on my wall as a big Mummy fan.
Like it was for me. It was really cool. Like I see, like a lot of people like the movie purely for Brendan Fraser, which I think is completely fine, as he absolutely owns his role. But from just having a quick scan on the internet and things, just from looking at the reviewing websites and things, like a lot of people seem to dislike the movie at the same time, as there's like, to quote, a weak plot and things. But for me, that leans into my argument with films, where it's normally, if I go see The Mummy, and especially if I've seen the trailer for The Mummy, for example, I don't go in expecting some sort of like Godfather, Tarantino sort of masterpiece that's going to unfold.
See, this brings me on to a really, really quick tangent I want to go on because this is something that's been bugging me recently as well. There's been a few films that have come out recently that I watched, and I thought that was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and then I'll go on IMDb and sort of like just to look at the trivia and stuff like I normally do, and I'll see the reviews, and it'll be like absolutely tanking most of it. And there was one I can't remember the name of the film, but it's the thing with Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans where they're like sort of assassins that are hunting each other. It was quite good. The Grey Man, the Grey Man. I watched that and I thought that film was great. It was just the right level of just schlocky action, and it's exactly what it says on the tin. Had a great time watching it. And I looked at the reviews, and one of the reviews was literally said something along the lines of like, "Oh yeah, well it's not going to win any awards. It's not going to like tug at your heartstrings or anything." Like, no, and that's okay. It's just an action
Yeah.
film. What do you want? Not everything has to be Oscar bait.
No, I fully agree. Fully agree. That's like, sometimes, it's like when we spoke about Godzilla with Transformers. I go in to watch Transformers. I want to just see some robots fighting and whatnot. As long as there's
Exactly.
that there in the movie, I am okay. And for me, when I saw this, because I'd seen Indiana Jones as a kid, but for me, this was just Indiana Jones meets Egypt and all that type of stuff. And for me, and a hot take maybe for some people that may listen, but I prefer this to Indiana Jones
I
wholly.
I agree, although part of that is A, it covers mythology, which I find infinitely more interesting than just like, oh, it's the Holy Grail.
Woohoo!
Um, and also like this has amazing roots, and it takes a lot of inspiration from Ray Harryhausen, which if anyone knows me, they know that Ray Harryhausen is one of my favorite things of all time. And I think in the audio commentary, I think they even mentioned the fact that like the fight with the skeletons was Harryhausen inspired. You can really tell as well. Like it was when they start popping out the ground, it was very reminiscent of the Children of the Hydra's Teeth scene from Jason the Argonauts. Just great.
So, for some cool trivia that I found that was quite cool, is that Brendan Fraser nearly died during his hanging scene.
Yes,
Um,
yes, he did.
uh, he apparently stopped breathing and had to be resuscitated, which is crazy. As I mean, if I nearly died on a freaking film, it'd be pretty haunting.
I
Let
mean,
alone
this
to come
this
back and do two more.
yeah, I mean, well, this was one of many things that sort of actually kind of caused the downfall of his career, really, because I can't remember if it was he just refused to use stuntmen or just they didn't really have it in the budget, but he did a lot of the stunts on his own, and he threw his entire heart, soul, and body into this. Like you can tell in a lot of scenes as well, the way he's throwing himself around, and he seriously injured himself on all three of the Mummy films. He was basically held together with Pritt stick and string by the end of the third one, and I think he caused serious damage to his back, which meant he had to keep turning down roles. And obviously, this was around the time that his wife had left him, I think, so he was paying alimony, and he was just his money was drying up because he wasn't getting any roles because he was just literally too crippled from making the Mummy franchise. Very, very unfortunate. I mean, it's great that he did throw himself into it, but I kind of almost wish he didn't because it's sort of what tanked his career a little bit.
I'm hoping now with the resurgence in popularity from The Whale and the awards that he was given for that and nominated for. I'm really hoping that will then bolster a second coming for him, as apparently.
I really hope so. He deserves it. He's an absolutely fantastic actor.
Yep, there is literally not one movie that I have seen with him in where I didn't feel like he put his heart and soul into it. Now, I may have not seen
Exactly.
many of his films, but all three Mummies, completely fine. The third one isn't the best, but I still enjoy it. It's just still a film. I just kind of like Brendan Fraser in itself. The George of the Jungle I've mentioned, really enjoyed that. There was, I've seen. Come on, Ben. There was the Journey to the Centre of the Earth, which was fine. I enjoyed that as well.
Nah.
It was just what it was. It was fine. Nothing too crazy.
I really like the original, so that one was a bit of a shit show to me.
Yeah, oh yeah, he was in Looney Tunes back in action, which was really
Yeah, of
cool as
course.
well. He was in Inkheart, which was really cool.
Inkheart was fucking great. He was in a really fucking weird film where it was like a preachy nature film about like people chopping down the forest. Unless I'm hallucinating that, but I swear
Dudley Do Right?
maybe.
Because there was one
All I
that
remember
was
is it was
Furry
April.
Vengeance.
Fairy
Right.
Vengeance. That was the film I was thinking of.
Yeah, so I was going to say it's like a bit like a Doctor Dolittle type of thing.
Yeah,
But
it was,
I
it was
think that
very
was one of
strange.
the. I think that was the last thing I saw him in, and I don't think I saw him anymore. So I just thought he just like stopped acting or something. But it's only due to the resurgence of him for the whale stuff that I even managed to find out about. Like I know he's in Doom Patrol and he's been in that for
Yes.
40 episodes, but I've not seen that. It's on my flipping list. But so that'll be cool to just hear his voice again, and that's nice that he's managed to like get back on there with doing that. And
Oh, for sure.
he's in the professionals as well as just that's
Shall
another.
shall we talk about the titular mummy?
Oh, that's
Um,
what we're talking about for this episode. Why of
I
course.
I think Imhotep looks actually when he's in like mummy mode. Again, CGI doesn't look great, whatever. But also I feel like he looks a bit goofy quite a lot of the time. I don't know what it is. I
He
think it's
does look
just
quite scary, and I do remember being scared, like only like just minutely scared type of thing as a kid. Not like I'm never going to watch this film.
I
I do remember being creeped out by it. It did look really weird, but in like a creepy
I
way.
was I found Imhotep looked the most scary when he's sat across from the dude whose eyes and tongue he's ripped out, and he's wearing that like man
Oh,
in
the
the
weird
iron
look.
mask
Yeah.
thing. He looked way creepier with that on. I think just this. Unfortunately, the CGI face, it doesn't look that scary. It looks really goofy. I think it's just sort of like the really big mouth and the like one eye with no eyelid. So it's just sort of just a big cartoony eye. It looks a bit daft. I think as well. Like, I watched quite a lot of the animated show when I was a kid,
Yep.
and it bears a lot of resemblance to that. I feel. But Arnold Vosloo, fucking phenomenal as Imhotep. He doesn't do a lot. I've got to admit, a lot of his role is just looking smugly at the camera.
And quickly drop your jaw as far as low as it can go.
I don't. I really want somebody to just do like Arnold Vosloo to come back and do a commentary where he just narrates what is going on in Imhotep's mind, because there's just so many instances where he's just like doing something and he just smugly smirks at the camera or like seductively raises his eyebrows. It's sort of like, what are you thinking? You're like murdering somebody or like somebody's getting away. Like I think when he's like they're in the aeroplane and he makes the big wall of sand appear, he just looks at the camera and he just does this like big smirk. It's just so bizarre. I want to know what's going through his head.
I think literally from this film, it like spawned him being one of those sort of like henchman bad guys randomly. Because I'm fairly sure that's just all I ever saw him in after this.
He's been in a few things, but yeah, he is mainly known for this and The Mummy Returns, obviously.
Yeah, I think he was in GI Joe as well. I feel
He was in GI Joe: Rise of Cobra, I think.
one of those funky GI Joe films. But
Hey,
no,
they weren't that bad.
yeah, no, they were completely like for me. They were sixes. They were fine. I think the second one actually I liked less.
The thing I find absolutely fucking hilarious is Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays the fucking Cobra Commander. It's just that's Joseph Gordon-Levitt under all of that prosthetic, and that's hilarious to me.
I know it's silly, but no. To be fair, I think this film that we're talking about is literally the best box office one that we spoke about so far. Like this had a $80 million budget, and it grossed to nearly 500 million. I think roughly that might be the best one we've looked at so far, but it was
I'm not surprised.
definitely a good hit, which is nice, and happy that it spawned two sequels. Like if anyone, there's a 2015 Mummy, I think, in which that flopped so hard that
Excuse me, it spawned 3 sequels. You're forgetting the Scorpion King, my friend.
That's I can't remember the technical word, but that's part of the franchise, but not a sequel.
Yeah, I know, it's a spin-off.
Separate.
I was
Yes,
being
that's the word.
pedantic. I actually like the Scorpion King film.
Yes, I think I did.
Actually, my collector's box set ranks Scorpion King with the other films. So,
well, okay, but I tell you what, though, even watching this film this week, that first jump scare with Jonathan in the tomb made me jump. That horrified me for a second.
one of my notes is where is it? Jonathan jump scares with a real ass mummy.
Like, what goes through his head? Like, honestly,
I fucking love Jonathan. He's so funny. The humor is what the MCU wishes its humor was.
Yes, like literally, it's like I'll pay £100 for him. I'd pay £100 to watch him die, and I just howling. There was so Benny when he's like, "Think of my children." You don't have any, not yet.
It's a trope that I love in these kinds of films of having a character that's just so insufferable and irredeemable that you just cannot wait to see them die, and they give you just that sweet payoff at the end of the film. And Benny getting locked in the treasure chamber with all the scarabs, fucking great, love that. Gives me real Alan Cummings in GoldenEye vibes when he finally blows himself up with a pen. Just yes, finally, fuck you fucking annoying character.
I literally just have Benny is so slimy, just written multiple occasions. But no, I was quite surprised with the humor. And sometimes for me, and I think maybe it's just my autism and things, but sometimes humor either goes over my head or I really just don't find it funny, which sometimes is a problem with watching some comedy films because I don't know, when people are like, "Oh, watch this," or "Have you seen this?" It's it's really funny, and I've sat and watched it, and I'm just like, it's not funny at all to me. But
yeah, well, like I said, this is what the MCU wishes it was. It's very quippy, but it's actually well thought out, and the quips aren't at the expense of the tone of the scene. It's funny when it's supposed to be, not really sad somber moment, quip to lighten the mood, back to sad somber moment. It's this fits pretty nicely. I did want to talk briefly about the curse of Imhotep, purely because it's not a criticism; it's just a strange observation. In what way is this a curse? He is cursed to be immortal, invincible, and all powerful. Explain to me why that's a curse.
Maybe on the off chance that he wasn't able to be with the lady's name that I can't pronounce, who was apparently, from looking at some trivia, was pretty much butt naked underneath her thing, other than some nipple covering.
Yes.
But
it's not very clear. Sort of what I mean. They say it's a super bad curse that they've never done before. Imhotep's the only person who was vile enough to have it done to them. But as far as you can tell, all they did was just lock him in a sarcophagus with some scarab beetles to nosh on him until he dies. And then obviously, and then if he's ever awoken from his slumber, he'll be immortal, invincible, and all powerful. I think maybe just lock him in the sarcophagus with some scarab beetles and don't give him the chance to be a god amongst men.
Because apparently, when he was being mummified at the beginning, apparently he had he was in bandages for 4 hours plus, and it really freaked him out.
That's one of the few scenes that genuinely makes me feel uncomfortable is when you see him fully wrapped up and he's in the sarcophagus.
Although I do have a note to say his tongue was cut and whatnot, but there's just zero blood coming out of his mouth or on those bandages. They are crystal.
Yes, this was a victim of the 12 rating or PG. I think this was back in the late 90s and early 2000s. It was almost taboo for anything to get a 15 or actually, sorry, for our American audiences, an M or an R rating, because idiotic film executives thought that it would pull in a larger audience if they made it like 12 or PG, I guess. Really quick tangent. The Punisher is a great example of this. The Thomas Jane Punisher film. A lot of the deaths are implied because they couldn't actually show a lot of the graphic violence in it because they wanted to keep the age rating. And I don't think it hurts this film that much. I think like quite a lot of the deaths, like in The Punisher, are implied, but they're implied so well that your imagination is doing all the work. I mean, I suppose how graphic it is as good as your imagination, but it worked very. It was very effective for me as a kid.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. For me, I think like I'd probably give this movie about a mid 7 to mid 8 on the rough. I think I still very much enjoy and love this movie, but for me, in terms of rating, there's different categories for the 9s and 10s. Unfortunately, and this one doesn't like sit there. It's a movie that I would definitely recommend to anyone and would wholly enjoy every time I watch it. And potentially, if we continue watching the series, I might even enjoy it more just for like Brendan Fraser's point. But for me, to let the audience know, I did really enjoy the movie, and it's probably the one I would recommend the most out of the ones we've seen so far. To be fair,
Easily. Like yeah, 9 out of 10 for me. And the one point that it's lost is purely just its age. It's just the fact that the CG doesn't look that good anymore. But phenomenal film. I know I'm very much of the like swashbuckling adventure films of the sort of 50s to the 90s. Like that's very much my style of film. Like as I've said before, Ray Harryhausen is amazing to me, and all of the Sinbad films and Jason the Argonauts, Clash of the Titans, and stuff like that. And this I don't think any film has fit that niche. Like the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad is my favorite film of all time, and no film has sort of fit that feel as much as this does. It's just great. It's so good, and it's a genre that I think is just dead at this point.
yeah, no, there is
Anyone in the comments is welcome to prove me wrong, but I cannot think of any film that has really captured the spirit of those sort of Errol Flynn-esque swashbuckling adventure films like The Mummy.
no. I have to agree from what I can just recall off the top of my head. Now, very easily could be proven wrong, type of thing. But from what I can recall, there isn't much that at least is a good film to a general audience that is like that. Anytime they've tried to reboot the sort of Indiana Jones thing, that's kind of flopped horribly. You know, I can't. You know, we had the Uncharted video game movie, which was fucking diabolical. You know, nothing for me since The Mummy has been as good as The Mummy, and I don't think we will ever get anything as good as The Mummy. I would be quite happy to get a Mummy sequel now, where he just appears in it. He's not. He doesn't have to be the main person, but I would quite happily watch him be in the Mummy film again. Just so
I must admit, I think it's a stretch that this even got a sequel. I think this should have been a one and done affair. Although that isn't to say that I think The Mummy Returns is bad. I actually fucking love The Mummy Returns almost as much as I love the first one. But it's a fluke to me that the second one was even good. Because this I don't see where you go from here. I think Tomb of the Dragon Emperor was just a excellent example of why this isn't a sustainable concept for a film. Like, oh, it's mummies again, but this time it's in Tibet or whatever it was. Like, okay, you're just gonna do mummies from different places. I can see why this bombed now. Yeah, this works for one film. They got lucky that
they got
The
lucky
Mummy
with
Returns.
3, and then a 2-film or 3-film spin-off. But I only, from literally looking at Brendan Fraser's IMDb page, I only literally, as of this week, found out that George of the Jungle 2 wasn't Brendan Fraser.
I didn't even know there was a 2.
In all memory, I've just assumed it was him being like, oh, I remember watching the second one. You know, I enjoyed him in both 1 and 2, but no, he's not in number 2 at all. And you know, it's not even the same Ursula as well. It's different. I was literally flabbergasted. The only guy that's still in it is, I think, Thomas Hayden Church, that plays the Lyle van der Groot, and maybe some of the
What? I
voices.
didn't even know he was in it. He's just
Yeah,
always Sandman to me.
Yep, he is fully Sandman. But no, I think we will have to wrap it up there.
Yes.
By the sounds of it, we both really enjoyed the film, and who knows what the next film will be that we'll look at. But thank you very much for listening and watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment down below. Keep the discussions going. We are enjoying all the comments that we have been getting so far. And take care.
Take care now. Bye.